Welcome. Thanks you so much for joining us for the 2025 Conscious Business Forecast. For those of you that I don't know, my name is Terry Maxwell. I've been tracking a lot of these statistics for about 12 years now, and I have been seeing some very interesting changes as of late, not just because of the election, the US election that occurred in November, but there are some very important trends that have some bearing on those of us who are practices of conscious capitalism and stakeholder capitalism. And there are important things that you need to know to set your business up for as much success as possible. By the way, we do a lot of community events, typically 3 a month. Some of them are like this, they're business focused. Some are what we call personal fuel. We have an event on February 27th that's in the personal fuel area on pure confidence. One of the things about having a business is it can push all of your fears to the surface. You're not good enough, self-worth fears, fear of failure. And so we introduce a methodology called Pure Confidence to help you with that. We also have another business training event on March 4th called Ditch the Pitch. And it's a way to talk about your business in a way that's authentic and real so that your ideal buyer connects with you. So feel free to join us for any of our events. If you don't know what ShiftCo is, we train difference makers how to grow their business and maximize their impact. I've dedicated my life to this work. I've been doing it for 14 years. I've trained thousands of entrepreneurs. We started ShiftCo just under 5 years ago. We have 85.7% of our members double their business, usually somewhere between 6 to 18 months. And I stay up at night worrying about the 15% who haven't yet doubled their business and trying to find new ways to help them get there. So we're very, very committed to this work. And some of the data that I'll be presenting today will reinforce why it is so important for the work that we do. My background is kind of interesting. I've had multiple exits, meaning I've sold multiple companies, including a internet IPO. I'm older than I look, and so that was in 1999. Was president of a subsidiary of the parent company went public, so I got a chance to experience that. I've been very fortunate as an entrepreneur to have a lot of success. And then in 2009, I had my purposeful awakening and I sold the business I had at the time, started over with this crazy idea. There has to be a way to do good and make money. I started Share on Purpose, which is like a purposeful Shark Tank is the only way to describe it. We have a speculator fund, so we invest in conscious businesses. This, for example, is the first zero waste makeup line. That is one of our investments. They also have a skincare line as well. We also have created our own companies that serve the conscious business space. Succeed on Purpose was the first one. Ignite on Purpose, Promote on Purpose, Talent on Purpose, and then ShiftCo was the fifth business. So needless to say, I've bet the farm on conscious business and I follow the trends very closely as an investor to ensure that I'm making good investments as well as steering our portfolio of companies forward in a way that makes sense. And that brings me to the Conscious Business Forecast. We're going to cover 3 topics today. One is, will conscious business trends expand or retract? By trends, I mean things like sustainability, equality, human capital. Will they continue to expand or will they retract? So that's going to be the first. And I'm going to be sharing a lot of different data sources with you and translating and connecting the dots to what they mean. The second thing is, what's up with all this conflict and drama that's out there? You can't look anywhere in any country right now and not see conflict and drama. So what is it about? What does it mean? And then third, and most importantly, is really about you. What can you do differently now to increase your success? So stay tuned for that piece. But I want to put that third element, which is probably why you're here, you're probably here to know what to do differently. I want to put that in context of the other two, understanding what's happening with these trends and what the data is really telling us, as well as why there's so much conflict. That context is going to really help you personally understand what to do differently. So let me start first with what I call value-based business models. Conscious capitalism and stakeholder capitalism are approaches and movements, but if you really separate them, they're really part of something even bigger, and that's what I call a value-based business model. I believe that conscious business is a value-based model, but I believe it's a business model, not just a movement. And that's a very important distinction. I've seen it that way since I sold a very large, successful company and began to bet on this business model. And I want to put that into context. In 1996, I left a very stable job and went to work for an internet-based startup a long time ago. Again, I'm older than I look. And I did that because I could see that the internet was going to change business models. And that ultimately led to me becoming president of an internet company that did the IPO. And so I feel like I am really adept at looking at a variety of sources and deconstructing where the opportunities are around business models. AI potentially is going to be one of those things that changes business models, but I could certainly see it with the in the internet space way back then in 1996, before a lot of people even knew that the internet was a real thing. I saw it less as technology and more as a business model disruptor, would be something that changed the way business was done. Quite honestly, in 2009, when I was doing the research that led to Share on Purpose and then Shiftco, I saw the same thing with conscious business. I felt that there was a new way of doing business that would become a new model. And what I mean by that is there's three distinguishing characteristics of a conscious business model. First is the product. So when a conscious business approaches a product, so we'll use Your Izzy, the first zero waste makeup line. This is a lip product. They've got mascara, lots of other products. The founder didn't say, "Hey, will somebody buy this product?" He said, "I want to solve a problem. I want to take personal care products and I want to create a zero waste version of that." And he was sitting in his dentist chair. We've all been to the dentist and we've seen the tools that the dentists use that are made out of steel. And we've seen them instantly sanitize them by dropping them in those little buckets. Well, he basically, sitting in that chair, said that is a solution to this problem of makeup products destroying the environment. That's what a conscious founder does, is they don't launch a product and say, will somebody buy it? They launch a product because it solves a problem. And usually it's a problem that's going to make the world better. The second thing that distinguishes a conscious business is pricing. So whereas a traditional founder says, what will someone pay? A conscious business says, what is it worth? And they're really, really focused on the value equation. And the third thing is how conscious businesses view success. A traditional business says, how much money can I make? A conscious business says, can I make a difference? So I want to crystallize these. When we come back to the solutions at the end, I'm going to bring this back in front of you because these are the questions that are going to help you create a fail-safe business model to take advantage of some of these trends that I'm going to be sharing with you. Now, let me back up and do a little history. So we'll talk about some conscious brands that you know. Probably the first and most recognized conscious business started in 1973. That was Patagonia. Ben & Jerry's, 1978. Whole Foods, 1980. And then Tom's Shoes in 2006. So when you hear B Corp and stakeholder capitalism, or you hear conscious capitalism, these are brands that typically are talked about. But there's a couple of other things that you need to know. Warby Parker is probably one of the most successful conscious brands, and they created a conscious business model to basically do eyeglasses in a different way. So these are Warby Parker eyeglasses. I love them. And they found a way not to charge you more for a better product, but to build a better product that was priced based on its value. And another example is Bombas. And Bombas, if you know Bombas, I don't think I'll buy any other socks other than Bombas. I love Bombas. So those are some of the brands that we probably know. What you might not know is that today, almost 50% of all new companies that start are focused on making an impact. And most of those companies aren't even aware that a conscious business model is a real thing. They're just feeling this call to do something different. And it's that last data point that I want to drill into and want to help you understand why this trend is so important and why we're seeing so much conflict related to this trend. So every trend of any magnitude follows a very predictable pattern. Remember, 1996, I left a very stable job, went into the crazy world of the internet space, and it was because I saw the same type of trend. New ideas, products, or technology are introduced into the marketplace. They're considered novel, unique, and revolutionary. Phase two is growth. The concept grows exponentially and new businesses jump in. But believe it or not, that's still only 14% of the opportunity are the folks that are known as early adopters. The first phase are known as innovators. The second phase is known as an early adopter. And then in the third phase, that's when everybody jumps on the bandwagon, when it's mature and it's obvious. And we hit maturity in the internet space in 2005. So that was 1995, 1996. It wasn't until 10 years later that the internet really became mature and, began to change business the way that we know it. And then it moves into decline, and then it's replaced with a new technology. Right now, AI is the replacement for what we know as the web. And so new things replace itself. Now, what does this have to do with you? Well, let's go back and look at when conscious business models were introduced. 1970 to 2020 is when the bulk of the conscious businesses we know today were introduced. Where we are today is in this growth period where the ideas are really starting to take shape. Keep in mind, 50% of all businesses that are started today are started for a conscious business reason. What I want to highlight is the gap between the 3% and the 14%. That is called the chasm. And it is the chasm where people resist the obvious. I saw the chasm in 1997 and 1998, and I saw the resistance to the internet, and I saw people fighting back of the internet. And they almost killed a lot of internet companies because there was so much resistance. And then the wheels came off, and it was kind of, a feeding frenzy in 1999 and 2000. And then, we all know what happened after that. The dot-com bubble burst. I'm going to come back to that little red square in a minute when we come back to why is there so much conflict. Okay, so for a business model and to transform society and industry, three things have to exist. And it's called convergence, where three areas converge on top of each other. The first one is entrepreneurship and business. Entrepreneurs typically introduce ideas because it doesn't exist, and then they create new ways of operationalizing the new ideas. The second one is consumer behavior. Businesses can launch new ideas all day long. We just use AI and ChatGPT. If ChatGPT had been introduced and consumers didn't grab a hold of it, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. But businesses grabbed a hold of it and consumers grabbed a hold of it. So for an idea to turn into a trend, consumers must adopt and align to that idea to accelerate change. And then the third aspect of convergence that must exist for true transformation to occur is technology and support systems have to be in place for that change to be sustained. So I'm going to talk about each of these three. Then we're going to talk about, well, what's with the conflict? If it's such a good thing, why is there so much conflict? Then we're going to talk about what you can do differently. Let's start first with business. This is from Global Entrepreneurship Monitor's 2024 study. Global Entrepreneurship Monitor has the world's foremost study of entrepreneurship since 1999. I've been following them for a long time. And they measure lots of things. They measure gender, they measure different countries, they measure business models. But one of the things they started measuring about 9 years ago was what the intent of a business was. And the blue line represents to make a difference. The orange line represents to build great wealth, a very high income. If you go back and look at the history in the Entrepreneurship Monitor, this used to be all orange. In fact, blue wasn't even on the map. Blue didn't show up on the map until about 2019, I think was the first time I saw it show up on this map. A couple of data points here. For the last 5 years, almost 50% of US and Canadian founders started their business for the primary purpose to make a difference in the world. 50%. In addition to that, many other countries are seeing the same shift. It's not just North America. Many other countries are seeing the shift where you're seeing that blue line go up and up and up. And I've been following this in particular for the last 5 years and watching it grow even through COVID. It went up through COVID as well. So the data is conclusive. A couple more data points for you. CEO Today magazine said sustainability and ethical business practices are a top 10 business trend. Fast Company said there's a growing trend of eco-conscious branding that businesses have to authentically align with. Another data point is Inc. magazine said sustainable development and moral business practices are a top 5 business trend. And then PricewaterhouseCoopers said consumers are willing to pay almost a 10% sustainability premium, even as cost of living and inflationary concerns weigh. That was their 2024 end of this year Voice of the Consumer survey. We can take consumer trends even further. So now we're going to kind of marry entrepreneurship and business together and look at some consumer trends. Because consumer trends, when I could see consumer trends adopting the internet and I could see the number of consumers getting on the internet, I could already see businesses on the internet. But in 1996 and 1997, left a secure job to go to work for this internet-based startup. It was because of consumer adoption. That is usually an early indication that this is going to be a trend that lasts and is a game changer. So what do we see in consumer trends? This is TD Bank's annual consumer spending index. What percent of shoppers consider and call themselves conscious? 58%. TD Bank's annual consumer spending. That sentiment in that same study said it's even more prevalent amongst millennials. 62% of that generation said they're conscious about where they shop and the products they buy, prioritizing local, sustainable, and ethically sourced products. 62%. That is the generation, the millennial generation is going to power the economy in the next decade. 62% of them are aware and are making conscious decisions when purchasing products. This is another study I've been following for 11 years. This is from Good Must Grow, and this is the Conscious Consumer Spending Index. And the index summarizes the importance that consumers place on purchasing from socially responsible companies. You can see it was already on a good trend, and then we saw a dip, and then of course we had COVID. And then it spiked up after COVID and it leveled off again. And then it spiked up again in 2023. And it is down just a bit. But I always like to look at data, not just annually, but over 5 years. 3 of the last 4 years, it was above 50%. This study validates what TD Bank study said. So that means more than 50% of consumers are making decisions, even when it costs them a little bit more, to purchase conscious products. Another piece from the same study is earth-friendly practices have held steady. So if they're purchasing green, you can see the green line. If they've reduced their consumption in some way, that's the purple line. So you can see that earth-friendly practices are also holding steady in spite some of the pressure that we felt on our wallet with inflation. One more piece to add to this, and that is technology and support systems. So that's typically the thing that really nails down a new business model is there technology to support whatever this innovation is? Does technology rise to the occasion? And that, like I said, is usually the third aspect of when I know a trend is really going to be sticky. What technology does is it significantly increases the speed of innovation and also adoption. And so things like efficiency, speed, knowledge access, data analysis, and collaboration. What's interesting about this particular trend is this is one that could go either way. AI can be used for very bad things, and AI can be used for very good things. The real question is, how will most companies and how will most consumers use it? It's here and it's going to be something that stays. When we get into the what do you do differently, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that particular thing and how you can address artificial intelligence in your business in a way that is sustainable. So technology, I believe, is set up to support the evolution of conscious business models, but there's also a little bit of a yellow warning light because it can take away some of the authenticity. The other thing I always like to look at is what support exists for a business model to really breathe and grow. There are 3 organizations that have dedicated themselves to conscious business support, conscious capitalism. I've been involved in conscious capitalism since 2010, and conscious capitalism is focused on reshaping the perception of capitalism. You also have B Lab and B Corps. They're focused on the certification of conscious brands. B Lab is the nonprofit network for transforming businesses so that they benefit all people, what they call stakeholder capitalism. And then, of course, ShiftCo, we're focused on growing conscious companies and teaching founders how to do that. I don't want to just focus on the 3 of us, although the 3 of us are the largest. There are now today thousands of tools and systems and groups and communities that are supporting conscious and eco-friendly businesses. And every year, I'm blown away that more pop up. That is a sign that this conscious business model trend, remember, I consider it a model, a business model, not just a trend, is for real, is that we're continuing to see tools and systems and groups and communities that support this movement. Okay, so that's number 1. Will they continue? In the full report that I'll release, which is quite long, there's even more data points. I just pulled for this summary presentation, the ones to help you understand. Yes, unequivocally, these trends will continue. And not only are they trends, I believe that conscious business is a business model unto itself. Then the second thing that we have to ask is, well, if that's true, what does all the excessive conflict and drama mean? You don't have to look very far to see that there's a lot of conflict in the world. So let me just try to explain that, because I saw the same thing back in 1996 and 97 with the internet, where there was a lot of fighting around the internet and we got to do this and we got to do that. And anytime you see that, I can tell you that meaningful change is preceded by conflict. This is one of my favorite quotes from John Danforth. He was nominated under George W. Bush. He's the 24th U.S. ambassador to United Nations. And he said, the loudest voices we hear are those that advocate conflict and divisiveness. So what I want to say, and then I'm going to give you some data to support this belief, is the conflict and drama is loud. It's not true. The data says something different, that businesses are changing, that they're changing the way that they think about people and human capital. I'm going to show you data to support that. But the conflict, don't be dismayed by the conflict. If anything, it's an indication that this conscious way of doing business is real, and we're just resisting it, that the old way of doing business is fighting back and is saying, no, I want to control things. I want it to be this way. I want it to be shareholder capitalism, and I want it to be about greed and money. All that's happening right now is the old way of doing business is fighting against the new way of doing business. That's all it is. So don't make it bigger than need be. Let me give you a couple of perspectives about that. So I told you I was going to bring this little chart back. And so this, what is known as the chasm, we have been in the chasm now for 4 going on 5 years. And in the chasm, that is where you see resistance. And resistance, remember that 1996, 1997, there was so much conflict about the internet. And it wasn't until 1999 that things just broke open and people had started adopting the internet, you know, in masses. But I remember those fights. I remember people telling me I was crazy to go to an internet startup. I remember people telling me, you know, that this technology was bad and evil. I remember all that stuff. I remember big companies, you know, slamming down little startups like us. I mean, you could just see it. And so the resistance is coming from the fact that conscious business models are growing and they're gaining momentum, and the old way of doing business is fighting against that. Couple of stats around that. I want to talk about DEI and diversity, because this is an example. Diversity and DEI, I know DEI is a loaded term. That is a conscious business practice. If you are a conscious business, if you're value-based, if you're stakeholder capitalism-based, you value diversity. You have to. Well, here's a couple of data points. We can see the backlash against DEI and diversity, but the data doesn't back it up. So this is from IBM's State of Sustainability report. 67% of companies have targeted talent programs for diverse talent, meaning 67% of companies are actively looking for ways to build a more diverse workforce. 70% of companies have supplier diversity programs, meaning that when I hire a contractor or a vendor or a supplier, I want them to be diverse. That report just came out in December. Harvard Business Review also published a report at the end of last year. 60% of all companies surveyed have a DEI strategy, a 9-point increase from the year prior. This is the one that got me, though. This is from McKinsey and Company's D&I Global Market Report. This is where the rubber meets the road with these data points. McKinsey, one of the world's largest and most respected consulting firms, said organizations in the top quartile for gender diversity have a 25% likelihood of financially outperforming their peers. So what that means is if a company values having gender diversity, men and women in their leadership ranks, they have a 25% more chance to financially outperform their peers. Second data point, organizations in the top quartile for ethnic diversity have a 36% likelihood of financial outperformance. Same thing. So not only women and men balancing, but ethnic diversity, considering having a diverse workforce, you have a 36% chance of outperforming your peers. Diverse companies earn 2.5 times higher cash flow per employee. That's a big number. I mean, cash flow is king, right? If you have a diverse company, you're likely to generate more cash per employee. Inclusive teams are 35% more productive. And diverse teams, this was the one that got me because we work really hard at having a diverse team in all of our companies. Diverse teams make better decisions 87% of the time. So what does this mean? What this means is the data does not support the resistance that you're seeing to a conscious business model practice of diversity. The data doesn't support it. So even though that backlash exists, the backlash is not based on data. And by the way, there's dozens of other ones. These are just the ones that I pulled for the summary that say the same thing. The data does not say that we should be moving away from diversity. If anything, it says smart businesses will be moving towards diversity overwhelmingly. And again, what does that mean? What that means is the resistance is because it's a different way of doing things. Another very important data point that will hopefully frame the way you think about your business is trust is at an all-time low. This was a very powerful study. It was a long-term study from 2021 to just released about the fear of whether or not leaders were lying. And they looked at government, business, and journalists and reporters. Look at the jump in 2025 for government leaders, business leaders, journalists, and reporters. But I want to particularly highlight business leaders because this report basically says that the vast majority of people, this is a global study, by the way, the vast majority of business leaders purposely mislead people. So they do it intentionally. That is a scary metric, that the vast majority of people globally think that business leaders are purposely misleading people. And that purposely word, that means they're doing it intentionally. They're doing it egregiously. 68 out of 100 say that I think the vast majority of time, businesses are purposely and intentionally, maliciously misleading people. That's the reason why our work matters, folks, is we have an opportunity to change that. And I'll talk about that when we get to the 5 things that you can do differently. The other piece of data that ties to this is what happens when trust is low. So this is a different study, Our World in Data, and they release this every 8 to 10 years, and this is as of 2018. The new one is coming out, and I saw a early release of it, and it's even lower in the United States. But this is followed by whether or not that mistrust is being translated into grievance. Grievance is when people have an axe to grind, they're pissed off, they're mad, they're angry, they're fighting back. So 61% of the respondents said they have a moderate or higher sense of grievance today than they did even a year ago. Another piece of it, they looked at what they're calling the trust penalty. Grievance imposes a trust penalty. The light blue is high grievance. Look at businesses at 42. I have a high grievance against business. That one really, really bothers me because what that's saying is mistrust is turned into having a grievance where I'm mad and I'm going to fight back. And most people are fighting back on reviews and social media and things like that, but this has a chance to escalate. We all know there's been a couple of things that have happened in the last 6 months where people have done really horrible things to business leaders. That is coming from the fact that this mistrust is brewing, and now it's turning into grievance, and people are taking action on that grievance. Okay, so again, there's more data, but I just wanted to give you the highlights. Now let's talk about what we can do differently now to increase our success. So 5 things, and I'm going to give you the 5 things, and then I'm going to go deeper, and then I'll recap, and then I'll stop the presentation and take questions. Number 1, double down on doing good, period. If you're listening to this presentation, you're committed to using your business to make an impact and to build something profitable. Double down on that. The world needs us to do that right now. And I believe that conscious business model based innovation will be the thing that changes a lot of these data points. Number 2 is you get what you focus on. So you've got to train yourself to focus differently. I'm going to go into more details in that. 3rd is grow your good. Right now, your business should be growing, and it should be growing so that you can make a bigger impact. When we grow our business, we grow our impact. 4 is choose your battles. There's a lot of battles that you could fight. Choose them carefully. And then 5th is get clear and get calm every single day. So I'm going to go into each of these 5 about what you can do differently. The net of this is the data overwhelmingly supports that conscious business practices are going to continue to grow, and they are going to continue to expand. The data overwhelmingly supports that the resistance and the drama and the conflict that we see is not real. It is just loud. But it's because people are fighting against this new way of doing business. So what do you do differently? Let's start with double down on doing good. Since trust is low, double down. Offer guarantees. I mean, as an example, focus on value and focus on building relationships. Double down on that. Third is modify your business model to build trust. Do that now. Don't wait. If trust is low and conflict is great, what can you do differently in your business model to double down on the good that you're doing? Find ways to donate to nonprofits, which are going to be drastically affected with the things that are happening right now. Offer a percentage of your profit to give to a nonprofit. Find ways to do that now. Find ways to double down on this. Again, offer performance guarantees, money back satisfaction guarantees. Find ways to do that. And if you're not sure how to do that, I'll brainstorm with you. Let's talk about it. So that's number one. Number two is you get what you focus on. As an entrepreneur, focus is your superpower. I say this to our ShiftCo members all the time. If you cannot train yourself to focus, you will not be successful building a successful business. You have to train yourself how to focus. We do a lot of training on helping our members focus. It's your superpower. And so ignore the chaos out there. It is not real anyway. So don't tune into the news. Be very selective what you're reading and how you're reading it, because the chaos that's being distributed right now is not real. And it is going to defocus you away from the good that you can do in the business. So be very careful with that. Secondly, the other mantra that I have right now is find the light and amplify it. It is easy to share posts about the negativity. Start sharing posts about the positivity. Find the people that are doing good and amplify it. We all could find negative things on all sides that we could amplify. That's easy. Instead, find the light and amplify it. And then third is focus on what's good and true versus loud, and really, really focus on that. Really think about the relationships that you have, the partnerships you have, the communities that you're in. Are they focused on doing good, and are they collaborating with you? So that's number two. My grandfather taught me this lesson, you get what you focus on, when I was in 8th grade. Completely changed my life. I won't tell you that story now, but I used that wisdom. I used it to change my life in my high school years. And I've used it to have a very successful career, and I've used it in business. It's very important. So I believe you get what you focus on. So if you're focused on the conflict and the chaos, you're inviting conflict and chaos. If you can find the light and amplify it, if you can focus on what's good, you're going to get more of that. Third thing is grow your good. Another mantra I have is you need to 3x the awareness of your business. 3 times more people need to be aware of your business. That's how you grow. Double your partners and collaborators, and look for people that want to collaborate with you. Double down on that. And then tell stories of your impact now. One of the challenges conscious businesses have is they don't toot their horn very well. Change that. Tell stories of the people and the places that you've made an impact, and tell authentic, true stories. Grow your good. So that's a very important point. 4 is choose your battles. What I mean by that is when I first became an entrepreneur in 2002, I failed miserably for about 18 months. I was getting ready to quit. And I hired a coach, and the coach gave me this assignment. She told me to interview 10 founders and find out what they had in common. I interviewed 10, and I found they only had one thing in common. So I interviewed another 90 more, a total of 100 founders. They only had one thing in common. They refused to quit. And here I was on the verge of quitting. And of course, this coach, Nancy Schreidmer, kind of laughed and said, yeah, the only thing that founders have in common is they refuse to quit. So Choose your battles. You need to save some energy for perseverance. A couple of other aspects is don't fight other people's battles. Some people are using divisiveness for self-service right now. Don't fight other people's battles. Choose the battle that you want to fight. If it's sustainability and eco conscious, focus on that. Don't get, pulled into another battle. A lot of people are using the divisiveness for self-serving avenues. Collaborate with others who want to do the same things that you do. I am a big believer of that. I will collaborate with competitors. I will collaborate with other coaches. I will collaborate with other vendors. If we want to do the same thing and you want to collaborate and create a win-win partnership, I am down to do that. So you do the same. Who are others that want the same things that you do that you can collaborate with? And then lastly is know what matters to you. This is a great time to go back and rethink your company values and really rethink what you stand for, and really get crystal clear on those things and articulate them to your partners and to the people who work with you. And then last and not least, I have doubled down on this, getting clear and calm every day. I used to have one 30-minute block where I did meditation and gratitude work. Today I have two, sometimes three. I really do believe that authenticity is going to win. And in order to do that, we have to have an obsessive focus on just doing a few things well, which includes being clear and calm. Start every day with this question: who do I serve and what do they need from me right now? If you start every day with that question, and I have a little block where I start every day, typically either 7:30, 8, or 8:30 before my first meeting, I have that block. And I remind myself, who do I serve and what do they need from me right now? And I use that to take my steps forward throughout the day and the week. Second is take time to breathe and nurture yourself, because we're sitting in a toxic soup right now of this conflict and drama. And if you're not putting your own oxygen mask on, you're going to get worn out. So really schedule that on your calendar to take time to breathe and nurture yourself. So the 5 things you can do differently: double down on doing good. Second is you get what you focus on. So be very careful what you're focused on. Amplify the light. Third is grow your good. 3x the awareness of your brand. Really focus on that. 4 is choose your battles, because there's too many battles to fight right now. So choose the one that's most important. And second is really get clear and calm every single day and carve out time to nurture yourself. As I mentioned, we do lots of events, typically at least 3, sometimes 4 a month. Some are personal fuel related. On February 27th, we have Pure Confidence, which will help you. It's a methodology to help you improve your confidence. On March 4th, we have Ditch the Pitch to learn how to talk about your business in more authentic ways. Feel free to join us for any of those events. So glad you guys could join us. For those of you that are tuned in now live, I'm going to stop the recording and take a few questions.